Since I don't have an opening act tonight, what I thought I would do is warm you up for myself. Young couple goes to the zoo. She's dressed provocatively. She's wearing a loose-fitting pink dress with a sleeveless top. They walk by the gorilla section. They see a silverback gorilla. Silverback gorilla sees the woman, gets very excited, jumps on the cage, holds on with one hand, starts pounding his chest and grunting. Husband sees that the gorilla's turned on to his wife, thinks it's amusing, says to his wife, "Let's tease him some more. Pucker your lips, wiggle your ass." Gorilla gets even more excited, starts making noises. He says, "Now flap your skirt, show some thigh." Gorilla goes crazy, starts doing backflips. At this point, the husband opens up the cage, throws his wife in with the gorilla, shuts the door, says to his wife, "Now tell him you have a headache." Maybe one more. Guy gets into bed naked with his wife. He says, "I'm going to make you the happiest person on earth." And she says, "I'm going to miss you." I think that ought to do it. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little story. When I was 9 years old, my parents sent me to sleepaway camp. So I get off the bus the first day wearing a pair of blue shorts, a blue t-shirt, right here in gold letters. It says Camp Akiba. Carrying a baseball glove, a tennis racket, and strictly as ornamentation, a very basic set of golf clubs. So I get to my bunk. Bunk number 11. I open up the screen door. Standing right there is my counselor. Introduces himself as Howie Cohen. Leads me to my bed, whereupon he makes this announcement. "Listen up, guys. I want you to unpack, put everything very neatly into your cubby holes. Then we'll go outside and throw a ball around." First part of that announcement did nothing for me. The second part lit a fire. 8 of us to the bunk. Jimmy Lerner, Bobby Dweck, Freddie Kaplan, Jeff Bauman, Mitch Schwartz, Steve Blumenthal, Jackson Kluger, and myself, Brad Zimmerman. So we followed Uncle Howie outside to this big sprawling lawn overlooking Lake Akiba. We make a big circle. I looked around that circle. I surveyed the field. And after doing so, I was 90% certain that I was the best athlete in my bunk. Here's the proof. 2 years later, about 10 minutes before my Little League game, my father pulls up to the field in a big black Cadillac. Gets out of his car, walks over, stands just outside the center field fence, lights up a Kent cigarette. Game starts, I come up to bat, leading off for Wendell Piping. The first pitch, the very first pitch, I hit over my father's head for a home run. As I'm rounding the bases, I can hear my father out in center field. "Attaboy, Zimmy! Attaboy, Zimmy!" Now, I tell you these stories to make a point, and the point is this. Compared to my childhood, my adult life has not been nearly as glamorous. I actually moved to New York City in 1978 to make it as an actor. For the next 29 years, I worked as a waiter. That's a lot longer than is considered understandable. By 1982, the job had lost its freshness for me. So then it became one of those things I do that I don't place a premium on being the best. I would go to work essentially to leave. I always worked in a very casual restaurant, which suited me. I could never work upscale, fine dining, where you have to be with it. You have to know things. I know 2 things about wine. We have it or we don't. I had a customer once, he said to me, "What's the difference between the Cabernet and the Côte du Rhône?" I said, $1. I worked in a fancy restaurant very briefly, had to go to wine tastings. You know what it's like to sit in a room for 3 hours and listen to this? Does anybody here taste raspberry? Isn't it interesting? It's so heady and generous. Such a perfect measure of balanced acidity to support the fruity flavor. Don't you think? And it ends so stylishly. I see it with venison, even grouse. What are your feelings, Brad? I feel abused and completely uninterested, with a perfect measure of utter contempt for those who are. And with a finish that is long overdue, I think this would go great with a gun. I remember one time I was waiting on 40 people. You know what it's like to wait on 40 people? First of all, you're afraid to ask if somebody needs something, because somebody does. I was just talking to some people who own a watch. Have a seat. I know you were running. They told me you were running late. Everybody else is warmed up. 90-year-old woman says to her husband, "Honey, come upstairs and make love." He says, "I can't do both." Okay? Welcome. So I was talking about being a waiter for 29 years, waiting on 40 people. You know what it's like to wait? First of all, you're afraid to ask if somebody needs something, because somebody does. I mean, literally, after a while, this is how I'm walking up to the table. Is everything all right? Good. I walked by the table once, a guy yelled out, "Waiter." I wasn't in the mood. I'll show you what I did. Sir, when I walk by, you just yell out, "Waiter," okay? Watch this. Waiter. Customer. I remember one time, not bad for just arriving. I remember one time, I'm waiting on 4 elderly Jewish women. You know what that's like? I swear to you, at one point, I walked up to the table. I said, "Ladies, is anything all right?" I'm at work one day. Guy walked in, starts doing this, literally flagging me down as he's being led to the table. So I walked over. He says to me, "I'm in a hurry." I said, "So go." I was waiting on a man and a woman. He ordered. Then it was her turn. everything looks so good, and you say you're out of the swordfish, well, I had chicken for lunch. I don't want heavy. This looks good, but I can't have peppers. I mean, I can, but I shouldn't. What are you getting? No. Okay. All right. Okay. I'll tell you what. I'll take... Give me... Let me have between the duck and the lamb. Which would you get? The duck, huh? Not the lamb? Meanwhile, while she's deciding, the guy tries to occupy me. He says to me, so, what do you do when you're not here? I said, I have other tables. I was at work one day. I mean, you talk about pet peeves. You wait tables 29 years, you got pet peeves. I'm at work, 3 minutes to midnight. We close at midnight. No one in the restaurant. The door opens. It's a customer. I see the manager walk up to the customer. I'm thinking, don't you dare. Not only does she seat the customer, she does it with a smile. So I walked up to the customer. Hi, my name is Brad. I'm going to be your waiter tonight. Let me tell you about the specials. Soup tonight is tomato basil or gazpacho. Next time you walk into a restaurant that's empty and about to close, do the right thing. Turn around. We have an appetizer, fresh marinated sardines with tomatoes and onions. I made $63 tonight, which sucks. But you know what? I don't want to make any more. We have a breast of chicken sauteed with artichoke, pearl onions, and pork. Don't you have a can of tuna fish in your apartment? Now, being a waiter for a long time is very humbling. But I could live with myself if I didn't have a family. Because that's where the pressure comes from. You know what it's like when you're not successful and your mother tells you about somebody who is? Did you know that Jack's son just sold his business for $90 million? See, I didn't know that. But I'm glad she told me, because otherwise I wouldn't feel like shit. I mean, I hear success stories that are mind-boggling. This one's the top headache doctor in the world. This one's building a home in Florida. 125,000 square feet. Can you imagine what she tells her friends about me? If all goes well, I think Brad is going to buy a bookcase. You know, years ago, my mother sent me this sheet of paper on which were written Jewish mother jokes. One of them I found particularly astute. There is a big controversy on the Jewish view of when life begins. In Jewish tradition, the fetus is not considered viable till after it graduates from medical school. Which reminds me of a very short Jewish fairy tale. A very short Jewish fairy tale. A Jewish man says to a Jewish woman, "Will you marry me?" She says no. And he lived happily ever after. So, I was on a bus the other day, And there's a woman sitting behind me having a cell phone conversation, one of these upbeat, perky, living her life at my expense, cell phone conversations, you know. Michael's taking me to Barbados. I love my ring. Oh, guess what? We saw a house in the Hamptons we both like. You'll have to come out. So I took out my cell phone. I started showcasing my life. I just borrowed $5 from a busboy. Haven't had a girlfriend since Watergate. Oh, guess what? For my summer vacation, I put my fan on high. So my doctor tells me that my cholesterol is much too high. That's because I eat glazed donuts for breakfast. I eat a pint of ice cream at least 4 nights a week. If I didn't exercise as much as I do, I'd be huge. And I exercise not so much because I love to exercise. I exercise because I don't want to look the way I feel. So my doctor says to me, he says, you don't have to give up the ice cream. Eat it every once in a while. I don't want to eat it every once in a while. It doesn't appeal to me every once in a while. It appeals to me all the time. If I want something every once in a while, I'll eat fruit. I can eat fruit once a month. I have no problem holding out. 22 years since I've had a craving for an apple. What is there, I ask you, to satisfy my need for comfort that is good for you? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And don't tell me there is. Don't give me this. Oh, try Molly's non-fat frozen vanilla ice cream substitute. It's delicious. It's delicious if you compare it to hay. I had a situation recently. Everybody here can relate to this. I get to the airport 2 hours before a flight. Okay? I board a plane right before takeoff. We're on the tarmac. They cancel the flight. 6 hours later, I board a plane. They welcome you aboard like it didn't even happen. Folks, this is your pilot, Jay North, along with my co-pilot, Doug Patterson. I want to welcome you to Delta Flight 123 LaGuardia. Temperature very pleasant, 76 degrees. Estimated flying times of 3 hours. Thank you once again for flying. Enjoy the flight. Apologize for the inconvenience. We certainly did. Philadelphia. I mean, give me somebody who understands my pain. How about a pilot who speaks for me? This is your pilot, Milton Zabalski. Along with my co-pilot, Bernie Seltzer, I just want to say, I wish I still smoked. I was supposed to be in New York 6 hours ago. I needed to make a deposit to cover a check. I wanted to go to the gym. My day is shot. Now I find out we're number 17 to take off. What am I supposed to do? Read another sports section? Fuck the tower. I'm taking off. Then, hold the phone. Then, as if that's not enough, then I gotta sit next to somebody on a plane who actually eats the food. I haven't eaten a meal on a plane in decades. You know what I'll eat on a plane? Nuts. Because I trust the chef. I'm sitting next to this portly, middle-aged couple from Cincinnati. Very into the dining experience. He's buttering his roll. She's peeling the lid off a salad dressing. They're discussing dessert. He thinks it's an apple crisp. She thinks, no, it looks more like a turnover. Never in my life have I felt so fucking superior. I turned on the television last night. You know Piers Morgan? He's interviewing a supermodel, Naomi Campbell. Whenever I see a supermodel on a talk show, I always get the impression that they actually think they belong there. Like their beauty is a talent. She said she still gets nervous before runway shows, implying there's something to get nervous about. You tell me. Let me explain where I'm coming from. You see, when I see people who don't deserve notoriety getting a lot of it, it hurts me. And reality television has fueled the fire because it's opened up the floodgates for people who want to be famous without the struggle. I would rather be a waiter for the rest of my life than face the prospect of somebody walking up to me and saying, I know you. You're Brad from Survivor Poughkeepsie. And given the current creative climate, I ask you, what are my options? My only option is to use my contempt constructively. Ergo, here is my idea for a reality television show. Take all the people who have become famous from reality television. Mark Burnett, Richard Hatch, Omarosa, Paris Hilton, her sister, throw in the parents, the Simpson girls, throw in the father, Nicole Richie, the Kardashians, throw in Bruce Jenner, the housewives, put them all on an island. But instead of a host, you have a sniper. And when there's no longer any contestants left on the island, I win. I was reading an article on Madonna in which she was quoted as saying psychotherapy was a waste of time. Now, if she had said psychotherapy did not work for her, no problem. But she wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for everyone. Now here's what's interesting. Apparently she has found something that does work for her. Kabbalah. Very into the Kabbalah. She's even changed her name. She's known in that community as Esther. She wears a red string around her wrist, like all the good Kabbalists. Spends hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars a month on Kabbalah water. What does this suggest? She needs therapy. I could write a play based on the things that come out of people's mouths. Years ago, I was taking a class in stand-up comedy. So one night I get up to do some material, and I'm really depressed. So I convey this to my class. One of my classmates, in an attempt to pin down the root of my depression, actually yells out, "It's the moon." I yelled back, "No, it's not." She yelled back, "Oh, yes. It's the gravitational pull of the tides." I said, "Really? You mean it's not because I want to make it before I'm 30 and I'm 45? Or that I made more money at my bar mitzvah than I did last year?" Oh, you know, I know somebody who knows Jack Nicholson, okay? And he was having a problem, some sort of problem with a young lady. And my friend says to me, I'll never forget this. She says, you know, it's the first time I can remember that Jack doesn't have life by the balls. See, Jack Nicholson is a guy who really lives life. You know people like that? People who really live life? I don't really live life. I tolerate it. I mean, I hear people complain all the time. There's not enough hours in the day. There's plenty. I've never needed more than 11. I was home the other day. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm lying down. I'm trying to recover from the morning. And the phone rings. Now, I get very few phone calls. Phone rings in my apartment. I get excited. This could be the call. This could change everything. Maybe somebody thinks my writing is worthy of a salary. I picked up the phone. I answered it as if I was in a good place. Hello? It was Jim Lewenda from AT&T. How are you today, Mr. Zimmerman? Can you spare a few minutes? I said, Jim, I want to ask you something. Right off the bat. Say I call New York 4 times during peak hours, and each call is approximately 6 minutes long. What I want to know is, how long would it take for you to go fuck yourself? See, you know what it is, my friends? You know what it is more than anything else? I will tell you what it is. It's the world. The world today is not my kind of place. Even the year 2013. It's not my kind of year. It's cold. It's high-tech. It's futuristic. My kind of year was 1971. I was so at home in 1971. Do you know the only thing that overwhelmed me back then was the stick shift and Amy Saperstein's bra. I was proud to be a kid in 71. We didn't have a PlayStation. We had a playground. You know what I used to do for exercise? I would go outside. I'd run around a track. I saw a woman at the gym sitting on a stationary bike, wearing headsets, reading Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood, and pedaling at a pace conducive to getting a pedicure. I grew up, as a lot of you did, 6 television channels. 6. How many are there today? Hundreds? Does this imply there's more to choose from? I mean, flip through the channels for 2 hours. Wife Swap. Super Nanny. Law and Order. America's Funniest Home Videos. Fear Factor. Law and Order. America's Next Top Model. An Adam Sandler movie. Law and Order. Excess. So much excess. When I was a kid, if I ever saw a tattoo, it was on a guy's arm, where it belonged. I saw a guy recently, half his face was tattooed. Now, let me ask you something. What am I supposed to just walk by? So I'm staring at him. He turns to me. He says, "What are you looking at? Don't be looking at me with that knowing look. You don't know anything about me." I said, "Yes, I do. I know you don't play golf." I'm going to wait till you all get that. One of my favorite athletes as a kid was a football player. You remember Gale Sayers? me tell you something about Gale Sayers. He would make runs, brilliant 80-yard runs that would leave you literally breathless. And at the end of the run, what would he do? He'd give the ball to the official. He'd walk back to the sidelines. I see guys today celebrate 2-yard runs. Routine. 2-yard runs with 10 minutes of boogie. I mean, this is not easy, what I do. Do you see me? After every joke I tell, take time out to pay heed to the achievement? Husband says to his wife, he says, how come you never tell me when you have an orgasm? She says, you're never around. Incidentally, I was watching an interview with the commissioner of golf, and at one point, he refers to the golfers with reverence as these great athletes. You know what bothers me? He believes it. First of all, I don't care how hard golf is. It's not a sport. It's a game. If it wants to be a sport, it has to add running. That's a sport. That's a sport. That's a game. When I see a man wearing a pair of pleated pants, a lavender shirt, matching visor, strolling down a lush green fairway, pausing every once in a while to hit a little ball that is not trying to avoid him, and yet whose readiness to hit that ball is interrupted by a sound in the gallery, upsetting him to such an extent that he backs away from the ball and glares at the gallery. I'm not thinking, what a great athlete. I'm thinking, hit the fucking ball! And just for clarification purposes, I want you all to know something. As much as I loved growing up when I did, and I really did, my childhood was not a bowl of cherries. I was a very insecure kid, especially about my appearance. My skin was constantly breaking out, which for me was anguish. Always wanted to be taller. Always hated my hair. This is the happiest I've ever been with my hair. I remember once when I was a kid, I let my hair grow out. I ended up with a huge afro with sort of a Judaic influence. And I'll never forget, with this new look, I go down to Florida to visit my family. I knew from the moment that my mother laid eyes on me that my hairdo was going to interfere with her weekend. So that night I'm sitting in the living room, I'm watching television. She sits down next to me with a plate of pickled herring. This herring is the best. Your father's out like a light. You like your hair the way it is? As far as Amy Saperstein's bra was concerned, the first time I tried to take it off, I tried to do it under the guise that I was a veteran of that kind of activity. To make a long story short, she had to help me. In fact, even though we dated for 7 months or so, we never made love because, quite frankly, I didn't know how. I mean, her area down here wasn't even a consideration. But holding hands, kissing, her smell, I still think about her to this day. I haven't seen the woman in over 35 years. Actually, I spoke with her 15 years ago. Very successful woman. Has her own business. Happily married to the same guy all these years. 2 beautiful boys. Live in a big home in Scarsdale. Look, if that's what she wants. Now, I'm going to let you in on something. I'm available. If I had to sum up my love life so far on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a 2. You want to know what bumps it up to a 2? So do I. I have been single for so many years, I go out on a date now, it's inconvenient. I was on a date recently, I'm thinking if not for her, I could be home doing nothing. And don't get the wrong idea. I have not lost my passion for women. Not at all. I saw a woman on the subway the other day. She was so gorgeous. I walked up to her and told her I had a great time. Of course, I've never been on the receiving end of that kind of a tribute. Women don't tend to catcall me. Can you imagine what that would be like? Hey, where you going? Therapy? Wow. I love a man who looks like he just gets by. I mean, there are so many women over the years that I've wanted to approach. I didn't. Why? I assumed they'd say no. I once asked a woman out and she said yes. I said to her, maybe you didn't hear the question. I went out on a blind date. I was set up on a blind date about 6 weeks ago. I knew right away that this person was not for me. I mean, right away. I now present you with the top 6 things that you can say on a blind date if you know right away the person is not for you. Number 6. I have a little surprise for you. How would you like your own table? Number 5. I have something to confess. On my way to the bathroom, I met someone. Number 4. Listen, I know we just sat down, but I want to go home. Number 3. I'll be right back. Number 2. Let's take a walk. Why don't you go that way? Tell me the truth. If you were in my shoes, would you stay? But here is the bottom line. At some point in my life, I would like to fall in love. Because if I don't, I will probably feel as if my life is incomplete. But right now, I'm talking right now, given the circumstances, I am all about me. I don't want to feel obligated to anyone. I don't want to feel guilty because I didn't call. I don't want to have to go to her cousin's wedding. I don't want to have brunch with her sister. I don't want to have to go to the new Kate Hudson movie. All I want is for a nice, attractive woman to come over to my apartment and an hour later to leave. You're very bright. My mother has played a very big role in my struggle. Quite frankly, I would have cast her in a smaller role. Fewer lines. For instance, many years ago, during my unproductive prime, may I say something? What? I don't pry. I know not to pry. I'm just curious. That's all. How much longer, Brad, do you think that you're going to give the acting? Mom, when I've given it my best shot, I'll get out. As of right now, I haven't. I understand that. I do. But have you given any thought to what you might do if, let's say, you can't make it as an actor? I'm going to make it. If that's what you want, I hope you do. Nothing in the world would make me happier. I just hate to see you struggle. That's all. You don't want to work for your father? No. You don't want the Florida territory? No. You'd make a lot of money? No. Okay. I won't ask again. May I ask why? I don't want to sell furniture, Mom. It's that simple. As long as you're happy, Brad. That's all I care about. I just want to see you happy. You can't know what it's like till you're a parent. Now I'm going to cry. Not that I care. But are you going to shave before we go out to dinner? My mother said to me once, she said, "Who do you get your sense of humor from?" I get my sense of humor from my father's side of the family. From my mother's side, I get my mother. I grew up in a very small town in New Jersey. In the same year that I graduated college, my parents moved to Greensboro, North Carolina. I will never forget the first time I went down to visit. We've just finished dinner. I'm sitting in the living room, I'm watching television, Mom is in the kitchen, cleaning. Let me make one thing perfectly clear. I'm full. There's fruit. You asked me to buy fruit. I bought fruit. Thank you. I bought ice cream for you. Your father doesn't need any. Thank you. Try the cake that Zelda made. Out of this world. I will, Mom, later. I bought all sorts of good things. Thank you. Have whatever you want. I will. I bought all this food, so whatever you don't eat, I'm going to throw out. I mean, now I feel so responsible for this food. I'm actually thinking I might have to change my flight. Can you imagine? Yeah, I won't be home till Friday. I'm going to try to polish off the brisket. So now my mother lives down here in Florida. I'm visiting. Sitting in the living room watching television. She's in her room reading. This drifted in from the other room. Brad, Jane Bendel's son Mark just got a hair transplant. She says it looks tremendous. You can't even tell. Whatever it costs, $2,000, $2,500, I'd be more than happy to pay for it. I would love a full head of hair. You have no idea. But I want to grow it. I don't want it appearing out of the blue. I don't think hair is something that should prompt the question, where'd you get it? One time I'm visiting, I had this problem with a tooth, right? So immediately she picks up the phone. Yes. This is Mrs. Zimmerman. My son Brad, the comedian from New York City, has a temporary crown that just fell out. It just needs to be glued back in. It'll take 15 minutes, that's all. We're celebrating a 90th birthday party tonight. I don't want him to be uncomfortable. I'd love to see him get a one-bedroom apartment someday. I have another son who couldn't make it. As long as he's happy, that's all I care. Hopefully next year we could all be together. I'd love to take everybody on a cruise. My husband passed away about 7 years ago. I have a problem with my eyes, very painful. There's nothing they can do. I've been every doctor there is. My brother is Parkinson's. My sister just had a second hip replacement. Most of my friends who lose their husbands are dating. Not for me. If I could meet somebody like my husband, most of the men my age want somebody in their 50s. Somebody to take me dancing once in a while, that's all. You think you could fit him in? She calls me up. She leaves a message on my machine. This is verbatim. Help me make a decision, my son, who to take to Bootsy's party. My Friday night date with the pacemaker. My Wednesday night date who dances but has arrested prostate cancer. Or a man I haven't met who's 6'1", plays tennis but has a steel plate in his back. So I called her up. I said, when's the party? She said, 2 weeks. I said, well, why don't you go with the one who's still living? I do want to tell you, though, I like this cut. I like you guys. How long have you been together?
10 years.
I wasn't expecting that. I was 60, 55. So you're divorced quite a few times, huh? 6 times? Okay. I know that. I want to tell you a blind date story. My mother went on one blind date. It's a true story. Guy pulls up in a 1960-something maroon Cadillac. He gets out of the car. He slowly straightens up. He's got to be at least 90. He's wearing an outfit that goes with the car. He starts moving, but it's not apparent. He gets to the steps, he literally collapses. Finally gets up, he rings the bell. My mother answers the door, she looks at him, she says, "Thank you, I had a very nice time." I was going to a wedding with my mother, and I'm driving, she's giving the directions. Not this light. Not the next light. Stay in this lane. It's still too soon. Not this light. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I said, "Ma, wait till we're out of the driveway." You know, I mean, you know what happens all the time when I'm driving with my mother? Every time this happens, you can imagine when she goes like this. She goes, "There's a stop sign ahead." I said, "Thank you. I didn't see it. All I saw was a red sign that said stop." You know, when I told my mother the title of this play was My Son the Waiter, a Jewish tragedy, the next day there was a message on my machine. I love the title, but it should be My Son the Waiter, a Jewish mother's tragedy. But make no mistake about it, I love my mother, but she has been an endless source of material. In fact, I told her that. She says to me, "What are you going to do when I'm gone?" I said, "I'm going to sell your house." But I want you all to do me a favor. Just for one moment, I want you all to assume that I had indeed worked for my father. I would be married, 3 kids. We'd live in a beautiful home in Miami on the Intercoastal. Basketball hoop in the driveway. Be driving a soft, yellow Thunderbird convertible. We'd be a member of a really nice Jewish country club. I'd be a better than decent golfer. My wife and I would have dinner parties to attend. But most important, I would have a nice little nest egg set aside for my retirement. Look at me now. I won't be able to retire when I'm dead. You know what my tombstone is going to say? I'll be right with you. Let me explain. You see, when my mother asked me all those years ago how much longer I was going to give the acting, and I said, when I've given it my best shot, I'll get out. Never mind giving it my best shot. Took me almost 20 years just to give it a shot. To use an apt metaphor, I was on the sidelines for many years. I wasn't even in the game. Fear got the best of me. If you add to that how hard, how incredibly hard I was on myself, it was not a nurturing situation. I had a friend who said to me, "You're the only person who can do a one-man show and not get along with the cast." My father passed away in 1993. So he never saw me do anything but struggle. In fact, one of the hardest things for me to do was to ask my father for money. I would call him up at work. He'd get on the phone. Brad Zimmerman, how the hell are you? Towards the end of the call. You need anything? I could use a little spit, Pop. How much? 150? I'll send you a little more. I'll send it out today. Thanks, Pop. You kidding me? My pleasure. Jeez, I hope you're keeping a record there what you owe me, because it's got to be up over. It's up there, Pop. You don't owe me anything, son. All I want from my children is respect, and you'll respect me. About a month before he passed away, I went down to visit him in North Carolina. And one afternoon we took a walk. Very short walk around the backyard. Beautiful winter day, not too cold. He wore a thin Italian top-of-the-line black V-neck woolen sweater. We get outside, we stood there for a few moments. He said, "Oh, does this feel good? Oh, does it feel good to be outside?" Tilted his head up, let the sun warm his face, got a little color going. We moved very slowly, held on to my arm, didn't have the strength to shave. We're coming up the steps, his legs gave out. He said, "Watch it," real panic in his voice. He started to fall, he grabbed me. I had no choice. I had to fall. We both fell. We're lying there, the two of us. He says to me, "Why'd you push me?" I said, "I didn't push you." He says, "You pushed me." I said, "No, I didn't." "You didn't push me? How'd I get here?" "You fell." "You're full of it. You push. I can't believe it. My son pushed. Help me up here, would you please? I can't believe it." So I get him up. He says to me, "Isn't there a song that goes like that? He pushed me. Oh, he pushed me. Oh, my son, he pushed me." Just like that. We get inside. He sits down in his lounger, reaches for his television flicker, closes his eyes. I stood there for a few moments. I said, "Are you all right, Pop?" He waved. I walked over. I put my arms around him and I kissed him. I said, "I'm here for you, Pop." He said, "Thank you." I said, "I love you. Know that, don't you?" He said, "Me too. Now go get me some butter pecan ice cream, would you please?" I said, "Sure." He says, "And do me a favor." I said, "What?" He says, "Don't push me again." One afternoon, he was lying in bed, talking to some of his friends. I was in my room lying down. I was listening in on the conversation. "What the hell do you want me to tell you? I'm not going to let this thing get the best of me. I read all these articles. Every single one of them says the same thing. You got to stay positive. And I'm a positive person. I've always been positive in anything I've ever done. Business, marriage, golf. You know, I wake up in the middle of the night. You know what I say to myself? Attaboy, Jimmy. I cheer myself on. I mean, if I don't do it, who the hell else is going to do it? Attaboy, Jimmy. You know, I used to cheer my son like that. I don't know if you know this or not. Brad was a terrific athlete. Oy, was he good. Baseball, baskets, tennis, soccer. You should see him in a golf ball, like a pro. I remember his high school soccer team. They're playing the only undefeated team in the state. Minute left in the game, no score. Brad gets the ball. He dribbles the length of the field. As time is running out, he puts the ball in the upper left-hand corner of the net. I want to tell you, I jumped out of the stands. I'm running around the goddamn field yelling, "Attaboy, Jimmy! Attaboy, Jimmy!" The same year that my dad passed away, I did a one-man show. And at the end of the show, this is what I said. I have 3 regrets that I will carry with me to my grave. I wanted to buy my father a steak. I wanted to give him a grandson. And I wanted him to see me blossom. So in 1992, my doctor sent me to a psychiatrist. And the first thing that he said to me was this: you have to begin to pursue your career with reckless abandon. You have nothing to lose. You can't waffle anymore. Otherwise, get out. Boy, did those words puncture my composure. Through this avalanche of tears, I said, what if I fail? He said, it's not about failure anymore. It's about participation. 4 years later, 1996, I took a class in stand-up comedy. That is when I entered the game. I was 42 years old when I started doing stand-up. I actually believe that starting that late has worked in my favor. Certainly my acting training has served me well. My one regret is that I'm not more intellectually well-rounded. If I was on Jeopardy, the only way I could win the category in Final Jeopardy would have to be the Zimmermans. But I now make a nice little living doing stand-up. For me to make a really big living, I'd pretty much have to be a name. I am a relative unknown. I don't have a wide fan base. My fan base right now is Boca Raton to Boynton Beach and my building. So I pretty much have to take everything that I am offered. Now, I'm at my best when I know that an audience is going to get me. As such, a New York Jew performing at an Indian casino in Minnesota during ice fishing season does not conform to that ideal. Perhaps I should have told them that I have some Indian blood, and my mother's name is Little Overbearing Running Mouth. I do a lot of retirement communities down here in Florida. Not really my audience. I mean, generally speaking, I like an audience that's just a little bit more present. But I always have to remind myself that just because some of them are sleeping doesn't mean they're not enjoying themselves. 9 years ago, I came down here for the very first time. I worked a Century Village in Deerfield Beach. And I walked down on, there's a guy sitting in the front row. First thing I said, what do you do down here? He said to me, I don't do anything. I take tests. But my biggest concern was this: are they going to get me? Will my material resonate for these people? Because typically the comedians who come down, they're Catskill comics. They're joke tellers, right? They're older comedians. For instance, the guy is kneeling in a grave, right? And he's crying. He's wailing. Why did you die? Why did you die? There's a guy over there. He sees him. He walks over, puts his hand on the guy's shoulder. He says, "Your wife, huh?" He says, "No, my wife's first husband." I mean, the old Catskill comics were Myron Cohen, Jewish couple, been married 45 years. Husband comes home. He sees his wife in bed with his best friend. He says, "Murray, I have to." You. I mean, what's left of the Catskills, I still work. They have little bungalows. I was told a great joke recently by a musician who they've worked with everybody. A prostitute walks into a stutterers convention. Sees 3 stutterers at the bar. So she walks up to the bar, she says, "Hey guys, this is your lucky day. Whoever can tell me where they grew up without stuttering, I'm going to have sex with." So the first guy swivels around on his stool, he goes, Cleveland. She says, I'm really sorry, but you stuttered. Second guy goes, Timor. Says, "I'm sorry." Third guy goes, "Miami." Says, "That's great, let's go." They go upstairs and have sex. Afterwards, he looks at her and he goes, "Beach." Last year I was at Kings Point, Tamarack. I'm sitting backstage. Right before I went on, I'm browsing through this magazine, this brochure, Senior Citizen. I come across an article called "What I Have." What I have. I've had 2 bypass surgeries, a hip replacement, new knees, fought prostate cancer and diabetes. I'm half blind, can't hear anything quieter than a jet engine. Take 40 different medications that make me subject to dizziness, fainting, and shortness of breath. I have bouts with dementia, poor circulation, hardly feel my hands and feet anymore. Can't remember if I'm 85 or 92. But thank God, I still have my driver's license. I'm not done. On the back page, they actually had personals. Senior citizen personals. One of them was so precious. It's called Foxy Lady. Sexy, fashion-conscious, blue-haired lady. 80s, slim, 5'4", used to be 5'6", seeking sharp-looking, sharp-dressing companion. Matching white shoes and belt, a plus. You know, what makes this so difficult is the wide range in demographics. 4 months ago, I was up in Stuart, Florida. I did an all-Gentile country club. And about 2 weeks before the gig, they got a little antsy. They were concerned that I would just be telling Jewish jokes. So when I arrived at this Gentile club, this is what I said to them. I said, you know, let's flip it. Let's assume that you're all Jews. I'm a Gentile. You wouldn't be concerned with me telling Gentile jokes, because there are no funny Gentile jokes. For instance, a Gentile man calls his mother. He says, "Ma, I know we're supposed to have dinner tonight. Something came up. I can't make it." And his mother says, "Fine." Whereas, a Jewish kid says to his mother, "Mom, I'm getting married, but I'm not going to tell you who." I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to bring 3 women home. I want to see if you can guess who I'm going to marry. Brings 3 women home. Mother spends 30 minutes with the women, at the end of which he says, so, who am I going to marry? She says, the one in the middle with the red hair. He says, how'd you know? She says, I don't like her. Now, Dee, the owner of the theater at the beginning of the show, mentioned some of the people I've worked with. I've had the privilege of working with some truly legendary comedians. Whenever I work with Joan Rivers, she always introduces me to the audience as the best comic in his price range. First time I ever worked with Brad Garrett from Everybody Loves Raymond fame, he had just started work on a new show called Till Death. So I walked out onto the stage of the Tropicana. This was in Atlantic City. I said, what a pleasure to be here tonight with Brad Garrett. My name is also Brad. And that's pretty much all we have in common. One Brad is famous. The other Brad is not. One Brad is rich. The other Brad is not. One Brad has a big penis. The other Brad has a new sitcom. The first time that I ever worked with George Carlin was in Chicago. And right before the show, he said to me, I can only watch about 10 minutes of your act. I have to go over some notes. So I started my set. I'm doing about 30 minutes. He's off on the side of the stage. I could hear him laughing. Even better than that, he never left. He watched my whole set. Afterwards, we're backstage. He says to me, and I quote, fucking great. Which, of course, prompted this big hug. After which I said, I gotta go call my mother. Ay, 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 ay. You know, when I was a kid, I had 2 priorities, sports and girls. Had a huge crush on Ellen Gramkow all through junior high school. She liked Gary Santiago. Had a crush on Melinda Brown. She liked Mickey Eisner. When I was 17, I got a job as a junior counselor at a day camp. We had a counselor softball team. So one night, right before a game, my senior counselor, Billy, pulls up in a gold Camaro. Got a friend with him. And his friend's name was Amy Saperstein. And the next day, I said to Billy, tell Amy that I have a crush on her. That was me making a move. So now, here I am, all these years later, entirely different priorities. My work, my family, my friends, staying in great shape, and reading great books. Very, very simple. You'll notice that God is not on that list. I'll be honest with you, wouldn't matter how long the list was, God would not be on it. I am very proud to be a Jew. I'm not a practicing Jew. I'm about as far away from a practicing Jew as you can get. I'm just above a Muslim. Now, I told 2 national booking agents that my goal was to do this show in New York. And they both said exactly the same thing. You can't make money in New York. In both cases, their comments had exactly the same impact. I felt as if I'd been hit by a feather. Whether or not this show ever makes it to New York is totally irrelevant. What is relevant is that I have a goal. I have something that drives me. In fact, I welcome comments like that because it makes me feel underestimated. So I use it as fuel. Granted, this show, it's not for everyone. It's just me. It's one man on a bare stage telling it the way he sees it. Somebody once suggested to me to shake things up that I show slides of my family. Imagine that? That's me bringing a customer veal piccata. I have no idea what my future holds. None whatsoever. I may never get any further than I am right now. I may still be doing retirement communities when I could be living there. Do you know I have lived in the same one-room apartment for 31 years? So finally my building goes co-op. My mother calls. She says, Brad, find out how much a one-bedroom apartment goes for in your building. I said, I already know. She said, how much? I said, $675,000. She said, how's the weather? Then she goes like this. She says, don't worry. When I'm gone, you'll be well taken care of. I said, well, at least give me a time frame. But you know what? When I think of my life, the life that I've lived up to this moment, what stands out for me more than anything else is this. I'm a very lucky man. You see, I have been given a second chance. When I was a kid, I had talent. I had no desire to get the most out of it. And now, that's what I'm all about. Somebody once said, money does not bring happiness. The pursuit of excellence does. And certainly, I have proved that to myself. And you know what else? As big a fan as my father was of me on a ball field, my mother has carried on the same tradition with regard to me on a stage. Add to that, my mother told me my favorite joke. An elderly woman is walking in a park, sees three elderly gentlemen sitting on a bench. She says, whoever can guess what I have in my hand, I will have sex with. First guy looks at her and he says, an elephant? And she says, close enough.